The views on a Breath of Fresh Air podcast reflects the parties involved, and we encourage you all to use it as a conversational tool, which will lead to personal studies of your own.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Welcome to a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. Here with your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz Gay. As a young person, Christianity can be so foggy, like smoke in the mirrors and so unclear. But we're here to bring you a breath of fresh air.
The king is about to speak. Silence! The king is about to speak.
My people, you know who I am. You know my feet. I have slayed many men and killed many animals. They want us to scatter throughout the land, but Nimrod does not scatter. Come, let us gather bricks and build a city unto ourselves that ascend to the heights of heaven. Send in my chief mason.
Yes, King? I heard you summon me. And by the way, that was a really powerful speech you gave. And if it pleases the king, I have an idea.
Tell me your idea.
So, I know the king wants this elaborate city and this massive tower. I was talking to the brickmaker the other day, and I think instead of using stone for this tower, we should use the bricks. They are 10 times stronger, and to keep it together, there's some slime or tar in the plains of Shinar. We can take that, and once it's hardened, trust me, this tower will never be destroyed, King.
This does please me. This tower will reach the heights of heaven.
Yes, most definitely will, my king.
Where is my chief mason? Status report.
Yes, master. So since we last talked, right now we're about 2,000 cubits high. They're still working. I just ordered about 1 million more bricks from the brickmaker. We have the first couple stories completed, and so we're moving along quite well. I think by the time we're done, we should be about 4,000 cubits high.
4,000 cubits high? Do you not understand my vision? I set a tower to reach to the heights of heaven. This is unacceptable. I want double shifts. I want the people working day and night. This is ridiculous. I will have your heads on a spike if I do not see this tower.
Behold, if as one people, speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them.
This will happen. You will make this come through, or I will destroy all. Remember, I am Nimrod. I have slayed many. Do not forget who I am.
Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they won't understand each other.
Do you understand my orders?
Huh? Repeat that, senor.
Do you understand my orders?
Senor.
What is this?
Senor.
Are you making a mockery of your king?
Repeat that, senor.
Is this a joke?
Je ne comprends pas.
Why can't we understand each other? My city, my tower. What is happening? What's going on? No!
The colors of the rainbow. 7 colors that, when seen in the sky, represent a promise between God and the inhabitants of the earth. God also told Noah and his children, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth." However, they got off to a rocky start. In the plain of Shinar, they wanted a city and a tower, the likes of which the world had never seen. In this episode, we will explore life after the flood and the story of the Tower of Babel. Welcome to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. This week we have our special guest, Daniel.
Yep, I'm here.
And we are taping in front of a live, quote-unquote, studio audience. So it's going to be our first one. It's going to be interesting. So if you hear any extra laughter in the background, you know why. And so to kick it off now, we are going to pick up from when we left off last week. So now this is a recap. We know the Earl.
The Earth. See?
Mm-hmm.
That's so that's conceited. You know what I'm saying? The Earl.
All right. So the world was so corrupt and so evil that God hit a reset button. And he said, okay, 120 more years will these people have to live. We know Noah preached for 120 years, and then a great flood came. And so now after how long was it? 190 days with the 40 days and 40 nights and 150 days of the ark being on the water. The ark finally came down and settled on Mount Ararat. And now God gave not even the children at that point. God gave Noah and his family instructions again. And so one of the first things God did, Noah built the altar, made a sacrifice that was pleasing to God. God said, "I will never destroy the world by the water." But he also said, "I knew my children's heart are evil now." Mm-hmm. And so then God also gave the sign of a covenant between him and his people. And now we can talk on this, where we're going to pick up from this episode.
Yep. So it is a very popular symbol that we see, especially in today's society. This symbol, it is representative of a lot of different hues and, colors. I'm trying not to use the word colors, but it is the rainbow, and I've heard somebody say that the rainbow has every color, but it's just like, depending on the lighting and where you are, you're not able to see every color. I don't know how true that is. That's just me repeating what I heard people say. But
I've heard that from the rainbow, every color can be made. Mm-hmm. And I also, with that, I find myself because of how the rainbow has been used today, I kind of, get a little,
hesitant.
A little, yeah. I'm like, man, that's not what that means. But I also remind myself that, you know what, I know what my father made as that symbol and what it means. And that gives me peace. That gives me, it makes me resort back to thinking of him and showing him honor because I'm thankful. I don't want to go through a flood.
That's a fact. So Genesis 9, verse 13, just for the listeners, I'm reading from the King James Version. And it reads, "I do set my bow in the cloud," bow meaning rainbow, "and it shall be taken for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all of the earth." And so just so that we could have a historical context of the rainbow was created by God as all of the natural resources and stuff. And when God put this in the sky, he said that every time we see clouds, we will see this rainbow. And it should be a reminder that I will never destroy the earth by a flood ever again. And it's just the more you know. You understand? It's a historical and a religious representation that is being seen in the clouds whenever you see a rainbow.
And there's one thing I want to point out too, how it says, God said, "I will remember." But here's the thing. The remembrance was more so for us
as a people than for God, because God doesn't need to remember anything. God doesn't need, like, you can't teach God something because God already knows everything. So the memory there is for us. So think about it. Up to that point, it never rained before. So now Noah is going to have to, and on this one, is going to have to repopulate the earth. And so now you're going to have to tell them about this story when this great flood happened. And water came from the sky and water came from the ground. So think about it now. Every time me living back in that day, I would see the rain clouds gathering again, I'm going to think to myself, oh boy, is this the time when God say he going to restart the earth again? So it's more so saying, okay, you know what? I don't need you guys to be scared every time you see a rainbow, like you see a rain cloud gathering. So here's my covenant with you. I am going to promise you that I will no longer destroy the earth by a flood again. And which is also going to be important too when we even get down to a later story in the Bible.
And that's what it just hit me just now, because I never even really think about the importance of the rainbow. You know, because it's a little cute thing you hear like in school or whatever when your parents teach you about the flood. God put the rainbow. I'll never destroy this again. But as a human being, as a man, it's some stuff that you go through. And it affects you, like, no lie, no matter if it was something intentional or not. Some things hurt. Somebody could say something, they might not mean it, but it still hurt. It still leave an impact on you. And we got to think about the post-flood world. Now, every time they see a dark cloud, this is PTSD. The guy who used to cut my hair, he's not around anymore. The guy who used to make all the fabric and XYZ, they're not around. The girls I went to school with, the girls I used to play with, everything are not there. Like, and this is just me being transparent. I lost a pretty close friend of mine last night. Like, and I just thinking about a lot of times that we had, and it make me sad. But imagine Noah and his family thinking about every single person they've ever seen that was not on the ark. This is sad. You know what I'm saying? So looking at the sky, the clouds that are giving the earth water and life and stuff like that, it's a blessing, but it can really just be a traumatic experience every time these people see that. So I feel like it was also loving, and God is such a genius, no lie, that He's saying, I put this up here, and it's a nice, beautiful thing to witness. You see this, and you just get relief, saying, all right, God give us a promise, and it's a God who does not break His promises. And so every time I see that, I know I don't have to worry, you know. And so I feel like that's beautiful.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I mean I agree with all of it. It is beautiful. And like, have you ever watched a rainbow? Like when you're just driving and you see the clouds and then you see the rainbow, it truly is a magnificent sight.
Especially when you see like a full one. Not like a partial one, but you see a full rainbow, like you're like, only God. Like,
oh,
seriously.
Exactly. That's just what I'm looking at. It's like you look at that and you're like, how is that? Maybe like, okay, if that's up there in the sky, how come I don't see it all over the place? Why is it just these particles with just the way the sun hit just right and everything that you see that? So it really does make you think of God.
Man, there's certain things that you can, like, it's so funny how God gives us certain symbols and human nature perverts them and corrupts their meaning.
Yep. Yes.
And that goes with multiple things, but it just shows how the enemy knows what God is doing and tries very hard to discredit it and take away its sovereignty.
To strike up confusion.
Exactly.
Imagine if you were an artist, right? And every single thing you do, somebody remix it, and they just do such a bad job. Tell it's like it's a funny, like they make such a bad parody of what you do. Like I'm just thinking about myself as an artist, bro. Like this is annoying. Like if anybody recreates my work with the intention to discredit me or just to make a mockery of me, I feel like that person is a loser, number one. You understand? But it's just you doing me such a big disservice. You feel me? And you know, God isn't a petty God. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I just feel like the devil really goes hard just to be petty and just to be stupid. Like just, I don't know, for lack of better words, like just, just to be weird, bro. Like.
And so, like, one thing you say that I want to bring back. So you painted the picture of the flood being so traumatic, and the reason I want to bring that back because
when we get further down in chapter 9, we see that Noah decided to plant a vineyard. And he also decided to, have a lot to drink.
Enjoy the fruits of his labor.
Because here's the thing. I only could imagine how traumatic that is. Because, like we talked about in the flood, there is no natural disaster that we could experience today that was more catastrophic as the flood. So you imagine going through that, living through that, being on the seas for those 40 days and 40 nights when the waters themselves are 20 feet higher than the tallest mountain. So you just imagine the sheer chaos you have to go through, and then think about everyone you just lost. So now Noah, I guess the man was at his breaking point, honestly. I mean, sometimes you just have that hit you. The man lost his family members too and all that good stuff. So now you're saying, okay, he got drunk. But then the Bible says something interesting. He got drunk and he was also naked. And then one of his sons stumbled upon him. And he saw his father's nakedness. And then he went and told his other two brothers. And so this son was Ham. But then Shem and Japheth, the other two brothers, they just said, you know what? Okay, we're going to take a garment and we're going to lay it. And they laid it across their shoulders and they walked in. So, I mean, I almost imagine them saying, we ain't even going to look at daddy right now. We just going to put it across our shoulders, walk backwards, lay it on him and just walk out. We ain't even going to look.
Yes. And that's the noble thing to do. And you could and we speculated that these sons were triplets. It's just our imagination. The Bible says Noah was a certain age and he had the three of them. That's why we assume that you understand they're triplets. Later on in I think in this chapter or maybe the next chapter, they talk about who was the oldest, who was the youngest, etc. And I'm a twin. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you guys know that, but oh yeah, you guys met my sister. Shout out So I have had to endure being called the youngest sibling in my household. Although we were technically tied, we measure age by years on this planet. You know what I'm saying? She and I have the same amount of years, but I am the youngest, etc. So, they could still be triplets, who knows? But it's clear that despite them being around the same age, they had different personalities and they did things. And they made different choices, I'd say. One thing I wanted to talk about, though, before we even get into Ham, really, is Noah. We were just talking about Noah he made a vineyard and he started to drink. And I feel like drinking is somewhat of a taboo topic in the Christian church. You understand? I feel like there is arguments and texts in the Bible to support both sides. Mm-hmm. That is a fact. One text that I particularly want to hone into right now is Proverbs 31, verse 6. Reading from the King James Version, it says, "Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts." And considering the state of the world right now and all that Noah has lost, I feel like it was very fitting for a man to say, I am going to make a vineyard. He may have made it from scratch. I don't know how he did it. I don't know if he went and found grapes and stuff like that. But he said, yeah, bro, I really have to free my mind, and just trying to escape your thoughts, just trying to have a vice. He found himself drunk, super drunk, to the point where he is passed out. Nude. I don't understand the type of night he was having. Seriously, why are you naked? That's what I don't know. Why are you naked, bro? I don't understand that. But I imagine that Ham was thinking the same thing that I'm thinking now. So look at an old man, look at him, he's like, look at this dude passed out naked, and Ham, he took it upon himself to make a spectacle out of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now I don't subscribe to making fun of people who going through things. Mm-hmm. Never was I that guy. Like people who have physical disabilities and stuff. That's not funny to me when you make fun of that. Yeah. You could come up with a fire joke and it just would not hit for me because it's not funny. You know what I'm saying? That's not humor to me. So Ham took this time to make fun and to kind of expose his father while being naked. But what came as a result of that is what I'm trying to understand the gravity of it in its entirety. Ham made fun of his father. I am not from this time. I am not from this culture at all. But I'm trying to wonder, why do you guys think Noah went so hard when he came back to his consciousness? And why did he go on to cursing the seed of Ham, etc.? You know? So can Noah not take a joke or like, you know?
My thoughts on the topic, which I had a father who drank and would get into those stupors. And I could tell you, and I've dealt with those situations. And, you know, one of the commandments that we all know is like, honor thy father and thy mother. And that in those situations, like, you know, maybe it was the first time Noah got drunk like this or whatever, but when you see someone you care about like that, you know, immediately, you know, when I was with my father, it's like, I need to help. I need to. And if you read what it's saying, you know, if we go, you know, line by line, you know, precept upon precept, it says right here, Noah, a farmer, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank from its wine, got drunk, and passed out, naked in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw that his father was naked and told his two brothers who were outside the tent. So right there, you know, when he saw his father, for me, being a son in that situation, my whole heart and my whole being is going to, I need to help my father. I need to do, but when you see what Ham did, he immediately turns, or he sees all of that. He sees his father down there. And instead of, you know, we can't really speak for what's going on, but instead of offering, like, cover him up, making sure he's okay, like, nothing else matters. I need to make sure my father is good. You know, instead he went back to go spread the word, to go gossip, to kind of expose this fact. Maybe he didn't know what to do, but I look at it as with a loving heart and going through a similar experiences. It's like, I'm not thinking about running to tell somebody I want to help. And I think the heart is what's important, because God always talks about what's in the heart. Because remember, he just destroyed the world from wickedness that was in their hearts. And he tells us about honoring our father and our mother. And what I see happening with his actions is, in his heart, it doesn't seem, maybe it was concern, but it wasn't the right thing. Like, help your father. And so when you see what the brothers did, they come in there with their backs turned and they cover him up. They're coming to provide care. They're coming to provide some sort of covering for their father's nakedness. That's not what Ham did. And to me, I think that kind of exposes the nature, because when someone's hurt or when someone's in that situation, where's your heart at? And what were your actions? And when we read the word and we read what God has done and how he deals with people, he's always talking about the heart. And it could be something small to us where we're like, but dang, all of that. But that's so important, because a person's heart basically gives you the whole alignment of who they with the whole time. It can be this small detail that they do, but later on, because it's wickedness, it doesn't amount to some huge pile of some wickedness act that has happened. And, you know, dang, we didn't know all of this was going to happen, but the heart is so important. And I feel like when he saw his father, you know, instead of his heart breaking about, let me help my father, let me do what I can, it got turned into this big spectacle, as you said, like, hey, Pop's in here naked on the floor, y'all. You know what I'm saying? That must be some good stuff. You know what I'm saying? And immediately the brothers are like, they walk in there backwards and cover their father up. And I also think it also adds on that when Noah wakes up, because remember, Noah got instructions from God. Noah got to experience that wicked world and see what it was like. And honor and righteousness and walking with God and being in community was so important. They knew God. They got to talk with him. So when he hears what happened, it's like, in your heart, this is what you do. Like, you know, your father, you know, we honor God. And as that line passes on, I'm your father, you should honor me. You made a mockery. What if I was to make a mockery of God that way? What if I was to disrespect the Most High in whatever fashion, whether you think it's big or small, but I disrespect my creator that way? Because technically Noah is his creator. So it's the heart. There was so much at stake about your action back then. And I believe he exposed, and instead of showing love and care and honor and respect for his father, he turned his back and ran and wanted to expose that, wanted to show the downfall in Noah. And, you know, it's like what we just came through, you know, just how we were saying with the rainbow and the PTSD, that's why I had to get this dream. What we just went through, you know, here I am, church, take my moment, you my son, who I'm supposed to feel like, hey, he gonna honor, respect me, he got love for me. I shouldn't have to worry about anything coming from my son like this. And this is what you do. So I do think that it did trump up to be a very grave. I could see why Noah was upset, especially after everything they all went through. So that's kind of my take on it. But again, you know, people can see it from different angles. You know?
You was cooking just now, bro. I wouldn't even lie to you, bro.
Yeah, man, that was good. That was real good. That was real good. Honestly, I think he said it all.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's one other thing I want to say, too. I mean, taken from a different angle, it's like, we just saw a couple verses ago where God said, every inclination of these people from childhood will be evil. And I think I even wonder if, like, Noah woke up and he was like, bro, is this really what you're going to do? And it's just so interesting, the parallel that we see with our first fathers. We saw Adam finding himself in a place where he was naked and ashamed, and Noah finding himself in a place where he's naked and ashamed. Like, it's so funny how the world still repeats itself. Like, the world is still new at this point, relatively new. And there, again, we see ourselves saying there's nothing new under the sun. Our first forefathers are both finding themselves in the same predicament, in a similar predicament. And what's also interesting too is, like, right after this point, right after they find themselves in this naked and ashamed phase, there were curses handed out. Like, Noah wakes up and he's saying, cursed be your son Ham, Canaan. Like, you're going to be subjected to serve Shem. Yeah, because Abram came from Shem. Shem for the rest of, like, your days. And it's something that's, like, also, like, strikes me too. And it's like, in God's infinite wisdom, almost like how the devil tricked Eve and said, you will not surely die, even though we all know the wages of sin is death. It's how the judgments of our actions are executed slowly. Like in Ecclesiastes 8:11, I'm gonna read from the King James Version, right? But it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of man is fully set setting them to do evil. And even like, and then it goes to say, though a sinner do evil 100 times, his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well them that fear God, which fare before him. But like, it also, like, it goes to show that because humans do evil and there's not an immediate response to their evilness, they even get more set in their ways to continue doing evil. And as we go through this journey in the Bible, we're going to see many examples of humans doing evil, having a chance to repent, but they don't really see some actions of it. And then we also see times where we see many actions out there, like not listening to God, but they still continue doing these things. And it's also, for me, because we know sin is a virus that corrupts us, and it degrades us, it defiles our ways of thinking, and it gives us up to deprived hearts. But it's also God's way of showing that, saying, hey, I created a perfect world. Your actions caused this virus to enter the humanity, but I also need you guys to fully see the actions of this sin, because I'm going to come again and rescue you guys, but you guys need to see what is the result of this.
Ultimately, like, and I agree with one of the points that you made, though, is that to me, it was something kind of menial. And that's just because this probably was one of the first times someone was ever drunk or ever in this manner. And I've seen people drunk all the time. We see it all the time. You see it on TV. You just go out on a Saturday night. You coming up to the ice cream spot. You see the bar. You see drunk people or whatever. But because it was so new, the way Ham reacted, it could have seriously been a result of who he was as a person, you know? And in a lot of cases in the Bible doesn't give you the whole biography of somebody, you feel me? Especially during this time, we have a few characters who they only mentioned for like a verse or two, you know? We don't know much about Ham besides what he did. You know, and besides that he was one of Noah's son. So seriously, this could have been Noah's breaking point to the point where he's like, all right, bro, like you've been doing stuff like this ever since he was young, you know? You're the only problem child. You're the only problem child. And this could have been the straw that broke the camel's back for Noah.
Yeah.
To the point where he said, yeah, bro, yeah, this cemented now, you going too far. So yeah, I definitely get that.
And to add on to a point that you have made, Earl, that it just hit me too. It was like Adam and Eve. We find Adam naked and afraid. We find Noah naked and afraid. And what happened when God came to look for Adam? Like, you know, Adam and Eve, they hid. Now, like, you can't hide from God. You know where he is. But, you know, they realize they naked, so they run and hide. And when God approaches them, you know, they have a little dialogue. And what did he do? He covered them. Mm-hmm. And then we go back to the same scenario with Noah. When Ham did what he did, what did the two sons do? They covered him.
Yep.
You know, it was like, you know, you feel this way or this action is occurring to you, I'm going to cover you. And that's what they did. You know, it's almost like, it's like a cycle. It's like redone. And Ham probably had the opportunity to cover his father, but he didn't.
Nope. Tried to expose him.
And the funny thing is, Ham literally did have the opportunity to cover his father because he was the first one to see him. He was the first one to see him, and he even if he saw him naked, he could have still covered him and not run and tell his brothers. So it was like a double-fold thing. Like, he saw him naked, made fun of him, wanted to get his brothers in on the action. You know when you think you got a good joke but no one bites? That's exactly what Ham went through. He was like, yo, come check out that. He's like, nah, bro, you tripping, bro.
He was the bad comedian.
I'm telling you, like, how you didn't have the knowledge to know that your brothers wasn't gonna go for this, right? How you completely missed that? You feel me? So yeah, that's Ham.
Yeah.
That's Ham, man.
All right. So now the Bible goes into one of its genealogies. Again, our favorite part.
Oh yeah.
Our favorite part. And so, I mean, no, the listeners out there don't have anything creative with this genealogy.
I was about to ask. What you about to do for this one?
I have nothing creative with this genealogy right here. But this one, I wouldn't say it's more interesting, but it's interesting because, okay, from the one in the previous chapter when we went from Adam to Seth, and we follow Cain's lineage as well. We saw how God spoke the prophecy on the coming Messiah from Adam to Seth. But now in this one, we're seeing how ultimately the rest of the world as we know it today is going to get populated. And so we have the lineage through Japheth, through Ham, and through Shem. I'm not going to read all of these,
No.
but is one thing is certain things I also want to point out now, because we read this in the Bible, and again, I'm going to say this, like, a lot of people just read the Bible and they brush over things like this. They just eat it up and just spit it out, and they're just trying to go through an action. Yeah, okay, I read Genesis chapter 10, Table of Nations, bada boom, bada bing, I'm done. But now when you actually dig into this, because we have to realize this is a book of history. So just in Genesis 10:2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. I may have butchered some of them. Forgive me. But, so, like, the Magog guy is interesting because if you were to go in the Irish royal libraries right now and archives right now, you will see how the Irish people trace the genealogy back to this same Magog character found here in Genesis 10:2. And so you might ask yourselves, okay, how is this possible? No, because the Bible is an historical fact. These are things, these are not just stories on a cartoon that we watched growing up. These are not just stories in Sunday school, Sabbath school, wherever you heard about the Bible from your teachers. No, these are actual events that happened in human history. And we get so caught up as just fictionalizing some of these characters that I think we really lose the significance of a lot of what's happening in the Bible, because this is God talking to his people, and these are, and ultimately it's God's instructions for us as well.
To add on top of that, yes, I was, when I first started, I would skip over these portions very quickly. but I also learned going back, like, there's a reason that it's in here. And also it's helping you establish, like, these names of these children, these became nations. And many times today, if you do research and you go through history, you find out that these names and these nations and these people, like, some people got wiped out, some people went to certain areas. The Bible lays it out that you can almost look on a map today and be like, wow, these are descendants of these people. And it really helps also as we go further along in scripture to help identify when certain nations are being talked about, like who went to war with who, what region went to war with what region, and they use these names. A lot of it is all tied back to these genealogies and these children that came, right after the flood. And it also goes, a lot of well-known people today and civilizations today trace themselves back to some of these names.
Especially people who didn't have to go through slavery. I feel like it's not that difficult to trace yourself back to these people. And this goes to my point that it is absurd that people think that that the earth is millions of years old. Bro, because oh my God, like we could trace from Adam straight to Noah. You understand? We could go from Noah straight to David. You feel me?
Man,
we know.
I mean, keep going.
We know Jesus came from the line of David. You understand? And then from Jesus, we know the earth we've only been around 2020 years since Jesus. You understand? Last time I say 200.
200. Great granddad.
I miss a zero. But like seriously, we're not even at 10,000. The earth is not even 10,000 years old. You understand?
On top of that, and that's why I'm a person that read, get as much knowledge, research. What do we take for today that gives us these millions of years and all of this stuff? What do they use to date these artifacts and these stones? They use carbon dating. But if you research carbon dating, it is not something that they can reproduce every single time. It is not something that gives you the constant date of how something is. Like, you can test it this one moment, test it another moment, and come up with a totally different time frame.
And there's so much flaws with carbon dating too. Because stuff
scientists.
Because it's like stuff like diamonds, right? But theoretically shouldn't have any, well, they should be hard to carbon date because they're supposed to be millions of years old and they're supposed to be under the earth. So they should never, realistically, since they were under earth, they should never even be able to be exposed to the carbon in the atmosphere. But you can still carbon test a diamond. So just by the same natural laws of science that they're using to date this object shouldn't even be able to be dated. Perfect.
It's flawed. The method to use, which is then therefore used to pump out the information as to give you, hey, these dinosaur bones are millions of years old, and we found this tooth at the bottom of the ocean, and they're using this carbon dating. Carbon dating is a flawed system. So how long have we been here?
Hold on, bro. I saw this article, right? They found this mummy who was like a million years old. I'm like, bro, chill out. He's like 1,000 years old. Bro. Like, relax. That's why his body was preserved. Like he's not that old. Like, relax. Because they were so amazed. Like, oh, this mummy has been here for millions. And I'm like, no. It's pretty recent.
I mean, it just goes to show too, one, how the devil really tries to corrupt people's mind, but also how we can't lean on our own understanding.
Facts.
Because what I feel humans try to do, they try to take something that they can't explain and they try to give it an explanation that they feel justified with. And we see this flaw, even we're going to get into in the Bible, that's just, it's a massive flaw that just damns humankind. Because, example, creation. We know how the world was created. We knew God created it in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Scientists, a lot of people can't rationalize their mind that there is a God that spoke the world into existence. So they say, you know what? You know what makes more sense to us? We're going to say the world just came from a Big Bang. The evidence of the Big Bang, we can't
We can't prove it. We can't trace it. We don't even know what made it happen. But we feel comfortable having faith in that versus having faith in God.
Which on top of that is another thing that blows my mind because, people that say, I do have, the Big Bang is where it happened. How can you believe in something like that of God or whatever? Well, you're using faith right there.
Right there.
I mean, we use faith all the time. I myself have never broke down the molecules of air in the room that I am breathing.
Have you ever split an atom before?
I've never split an atom before, but therefore I think I made some atoms. But, same thing. I'm breathing in oxygen. I ain't never break it down so I could see it for myself. But I'm pretty sure I'm breathing right now some oxygen.
Exactly.
But I've never seen it, never tested it for myself. But we just take that. Oh, that's a fact. But no, man, we practice faith every day on simple things that we just take for granted. But it's like, you were saying the concept of God, that he used his word to create something. That's just too much for me. I can't really take that in. And it all boils down to fear. What you don't know, a lot of the flaw with people and everything is, I'm afraid now. I don't know what to expect. I can't prepare. But that's the beauty of who God was. And everything's like, don't worry about all that. I already got you. I already got everything. Just listen. Hey, follow what I'm trying to do for you and everything. Just follow the Most High. Don't get involved in all that stuff. You're going to be all right. But that's difficult for a lot of people to consume and to accept. They need to take power within their own hands.
Exactly, because a lot of people have a lot of pride, and a lot of people want to be their own gods, bro.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's why, especially in our culture, it's such a noble thing to be self-made. You understand? But everybody needs help for sure, But you wear being self-made as a badge of honor because I am sufficient all by myself. I don't need to outsource, etc. And that's not God's intention for us at all. See, God is a being that knows it all. And let's say last year, if we were able to have a conversation with God and say, "Hey God, 2020, clear vision, 2020 vision, what you got in store for me," right? God say, since you asked, do you really want to know? No, do you really want to know? I mean, yeah, God, I know it's gonna be big. Last year I had a big year. I know it's gonna be this bigger.
I go and say, "You right?"
You're not gonna believe this one for sure, right? But if he seriously tells you about the pandemic, staying inside, having to change the way we interact with people, the protests and all of these stuff going on, like it would be mind blowing to us. I don't think there is. This is Nakhaz. I don't think there is anybody in the world who could have predicted this year to be like this.
No,
you understand? Like
not
anybody
even
like,
when the year started.
Exactly, bro.
Not even in February.
That's what I'm saying. In February, bro. It's like. Anyway, I'm not even gonna get it.
You want to finish?
Yeah. Let me land the plane. So, with that being said, we could make projections on our own lives, but it's based on a finite amount of wisdom. Yes. We serve a God with an infinite amount of wisdom. He knows the beginning and the end. He does not exist in time. You feel me? So it is like if you had to think, who you think would be best fitting to plan your future? The person who knows the beginning from the end, or the person who doesn't know what tomorrow will bring? Exactly. You understand? Man. None of us knew what 2020 was gonna bring, but we still want to plan, etc. But it's like God's plan is saying, rely on me. I'll tell you how to go. Everybody in the Bible who went on to do big things had to be fully reliant on God. You understand? I had to have that type of faith. And I feel like scientists, because what they do is so dependent on proving stuff. It's like faith is a very uncomfortable situation for them, especially acknowledging it, because like you say, believing in certain theories takes faith. That's when they throw the white flag. I've already expanded my research to the max, and so I just have to be okay with, it had to be a big bang or something, but they don't want to acknowledge that that's fate. And I feel like that's the issue with a lot of human beings. Like they don't want to have faith and they don't want to be submissive to God.
All right, so bring it back. Really good point. But to bring it back now, so there's two more things I want to point out from chapter 10, and then we can discuss some of these things too. But to go back, like how Daniel was saying, like we can see how these children from these different lineages went on to do different stuff and great stuff. Like in verse 4, we can see how there were maritime people spread out. And then in verse 8, we get told of Cush, the father of Nimrod. And Nimrod, who grew to become a mighty warrior on earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. This is why it said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And then, and this is into the line of Ham. And we already kind of talked about how Ham was, and how he had this massive iniquity in his heart, too, you can say. And so, and it's some interesting, some of the cities that came out of this lineage. Babylon, and we all know what Babylon's associated with. You have Nineveh. We know how they were enemies to the Israelites from the story of Jonah. You have Assyria. You have the Amorites, the Hivites, the Samarites, and like some of these, and you go further on the Bible, and you even see the Philistines came from this line too. You can see like these were like the enemies of the children of Shem, who were also the Israelites. And so you can see how this line was almost echoing to the line of Cain. Like they
direct enemies of the children of God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want to point out. I don't know if you guys want to discuss Nimrod, but you hear how Nimrod was a great and mighty warrior. And it's interesting how he said he set up his center, his kingdom in the land of Babylon in Shinar. And I wanted to point that out too. And there's another thing I want to point out, that you see at the end of each of these verses that, well, as we get to the end of each lineage, it says, from these they were spread out by their territories and with their nations, and each with its own language. But here's the thing. Up to this point, up until like after the flood, there was only one language. There was only one nation, but there's only one language. And so this is like almost an example of the Bible. We see the Bible doing this several times, when the Bible would tell you something happened, and then the Bible tells you how it happened. Like the first example we saw about this was in creation. How God said, yeah, I created humans on the 6th day. But then we see in chapter 2, God said, okay, yeah, I formed from the dust of the earth a man. I put him to sleep, took out his rib, formed out of the dust of the earth a woman. But we already knew that humans were formed on the 6th day from chapter 1 of the Bible. But then in chapter 2, we found out exactly how he did it. So now in chapter 10, we see all of these cities, all of these nations, all of these places getting spread around the earth by their clans and their languages and their territories and their nation. But in chapter 11, we're going to find out exactly why and exactly how this came about.
Yep. Yeah, so just like you mentioned, sometimes the Bible kind of jumps the gun, and it helps you to understand the timeline before going into detail on how these things happen within the timeline. So yeah, that makes sense. Because even in verse 11, in chapter 11, it starts off saying, though, and it's kind of contradictory if you didn't really put these two together, because it says the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And this is one of the most pivotal, the most important things in this story, which is called the Tower of Babel, the story of the Tower of Babel. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one unto the other, go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. I found that to be pretty interesting, because it's a misconception that the people of old were not as smart as we are today. And I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm a very intelligent guy. If I don't know, I might be a little biased, but if I had to define myself, but I don't think
I was cocky,
right? But it's like, I don't think I'd know if I had to make brick, I wouldn't know where to start. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have to revert to my forefathers who I wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel in a sense, you know. But these guys, you know, they just took their natural resources. Let's build these brick thoroughly, because they had plans for this brick. You know what I'm saying? We needed a sturdy brick. It's not an average house, you know. And so yeah, and they took, I guess, what they call slime, I guess, I don't know, it's probably another word for cement, you know, and they use that for building. And I don't think that's something that a Neanderthal could do. When you think about the early civilization, these people were struggling to make a wheel, to make a circle, you know what I'm saying? Like, but they got bricks, you know?
And so, and like, again, you know, when you break that down and read that small verse, I'm going to go with 3. It says, they said to one another, come, let's make bricks. So we got bricks. They're going to, and fire them well. So now they got fire and bricks. They use brick for stone. So they're going to use the brick to make stone and tar for mortar. Mortar is used to help stick with the stones. So you got a whole scientific breakdown right here. They're going to tell you how they're going to make it with the fire. They know that, hey, even if we made this big block, it got to stick to something. So we got to make this other materials. This is chemistry all going on in here. And then on top of that, the whole plan of what they was going to build was going to be something magnificent. So they know structure. They know the type of length and width and all of this stuff. And they're supposed to be some cavemen.
Yeah,
they're supposed to be living in a cave.
They're supposed to be struggling to make fire.
Right.
Like,
they're supposed to be sitting up there in the circle trying to figure out how to make fire, man.
how we gonna do this?
How we gonna?
And like, it's one thing just to point out too, because, and just to reinforce your points. Like the Bible says, they say we're going to use this brick in place of stone. So now think about it. I mean, me before I taught engineering or whatever, stone was hard, brick was hard too. So these people already knew that this brick was going to be stronger than the stone that was already naturally formed on the earth. So let's think about that. Like they already had material testing analyses to even determine this ahead of time. And so think of like, this ain't no Neanderthal, no pre-ape person who can do this trying to struggle with fire. Because we knew what it takes to make a brick in today's era with a furnace and everything. So that means they had all this technology already. They already knew the heat it would take to make a brick because it's different levels of heat.
Exactly.
And they knew all of this way back then.
And you get it from just that small little brick, and that's why you got to break it down. I mean, my beautiful wife, she happens to be a civil engineer.
Shout out.
Hey,
And the work that she does is she explains to me, sometimes, you have to understand the gradient of this dirt over here. And I'm looking at her like, why the dirt matter? But you know what? That's exactly like, so, and you know what, to this day, what they were doing and what they broke down is what we pay civil engineers hundreds of thousands of dollars to do today.
Hey, shout out to the civil engineers.
Shout out to the civil engineers.
Shout out to civil engineers. You know what I'm saying? And there's been plenty of others, but
there are a few other civil engineers that are friends of the shows. You know what I'm saying? That we know of.
It's all good.
But again, that's what, and I feel like, it's those type of things that you can easily miss, like what these people are saying they're going to do. And actually, in just that statement alone, I mean, you got chemistry going on. You got analysis of the ground, the
Exactly.
dirt, all of this stuff, which is kind of the engineers of our society today. So
knowing that
in
the
that
tar,
verse, it's almost like you got something like that going on. So it lets you know. I don't think that the whole caveman story is really adding up.
And it goes to your point that we made off mic about how people look at the Bible and they assume there's some type of fairy world. But I feel like it's very important as people on the quest for truth, it's very important that we personalize the people in the Bible and we put everybody in our shoes. We think about it as if this was today, because these human beings at the end of the day, and they weren't human beings that were deprived of knowledge or that were inferior in mindset. Like that's such a misconception. You have to think. I think about the Bible as if it was just me and my friends and stuff like that.
Man.
And
even like to go back to somewhat like all of our points right now, just to even prove how smart the ancient civilizations were. There are many monuments around the world that humans today cannot replicate. Angkor Wat, the Great Pyramids in Egypt. You have the ancient civilization, Stonehenge in England. They don't know how they lift those big rocks there. And these things are massive. So I'm like, just think about this. So that these are ancient people who lived way long ago, who did these monuments on Earth. And to this day, with our modern technology, we can't replicate that.
Side note, we got some Stonehenges right here in the United States. People don't even know about.
Oh, really?
Yes. You're saying we got structures here. They don't really get talked about, but we got structures here similar to Stonehenge that they, once again, don't know how they got these rocks here, don't know how they move, don't know what they stand for. Some of them got ancient writings on there. We don't know what they mean, don't know what they say. It's all over the place.
I'm gonna get back to that point too. That same writings point too. When we land this story too, just remind me if I forget.
Got you.
But
So yeah, back to the point. So they were making bricks for something, right? And they needed some sturdy bricks.
Yeah.
All right, so
real sturdy
so
bricks.
I am about to paraphrase how it went down, how I perceived the Tower of Babel, right? So you have a bunch of people now who heard the stories of the Great Flood, you know, and you can see the effects of how the world used to be. You could see the effects of how the flood shaped the world, etc. And these are people who were not allies of God in a sense. Like even Nimrod of the descendant of Ham, you know, he was like the leader of Babel during the time. And the people in this town saying, we're gonna make a city. And in this city, the most pivotal part of the city is going to be a tower. And we are going to make this tower not because it's pretty, but we're going to make this as a defense mechanism against God. So right there is where you could already see where the people of the world are getting very brazen against God already. They saying, we know God have the power to destroy the world, but you know what we're going to do? Because we're not Neanderthals and because we're actually smart, we're going to combat that by building a tower so high that you will not be able to destroy us with a flood. And so let's think about these bricks, these very sturdy bricks, right? Mount Everest is how much? Like 26,000 feet, right?
Tall.
Imagine if we were building a tower as tall as Mount Everest. How are you going to get any one brick all the way up there? You understand? Like I feel like it's underrated the resources that these people would have had. You know? So they all came together and they say, man, let's get this into motion.
Yep.
And they start doing it and they start doing it. And God had to say, you about to say something?
Keep going. I'm gonna talk after you, bro.
Yeah, and God had to say, wait, hold on, what's going on there? You know what I'm saying? Like the Godhead, they look like, hold on, wait, you see that?
That's kind of big.
Yeah, that's kind of big. Well, they pulling this off.
Close to the front door.
They're getting closer. Hey, I can hear them louder now. Oh no. So God said, they got me on a technicality. I can't destroy the world anymore by water. You know what? And I'm not even gonna stoop to their level because that's what they want. They want me to.
Yeah.
So, because think about it, if he doesn't destroy it by water, the tower would be useless at this point. He said, that's what they want. I'm not gonna stoop to their level. I'm about to remix everything they got going on. All right. So everybody was of one language. I'm about to give them a whole bunch of different languages, and it's gonna take them a minute to even catch on to what's going on. You feel me? I'm gonna let Earl get his point out though.
Come on, you was on the roll. I don't even want to talk no more. All right, so there's a couple of things I just want to like iron out, and I'm gonna get to my actual points in a bit. So, growing up, this just relate to the people out there. Growing up, I had this image in my head of the Leaning Tower of Pisa just going straight up into the heavens. I want you to take it out your mind. Because that's a really incorrect representation of what the Tower of Babel really was. So back in those days, like tower in this sense would be a ziggurat. And so the closest thing to a ziggurat that we have in today's age is like, just think of the Great Pyramids and the Steps Pyramids. So this was a massive, so that's what I really wanted to show, like really want people to understand why the big bricks were so important and why just the sheer size of the structure would have been so impressive. Because think about it. What these people said is, come, let us make a name for ourselves. That in its sense means they want to do something so miraculous, so with so much splendor and so much poise that it is going to be the talk of the whole world. That was their objective. So this was going to be a big, massive pyramid reaching up into the heavens. And then second, people try to wonder what was so bad about doing that? We have to remember what God told Noah: be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. So now these people said, okay, we're going to build ourselves a city right here, so we don't have to like what did it say right there? So we build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches the heavens, that we make for ourselves and do not scatter over the face of the whole earth. So this was a city of rebellion. This city was in a direct opposition to God's law. Because the purposes of this city was saying, okay, we're going to essentially not understand it. God said, spread and fill the earth. They were like, why do we have to fill the earth? We can make this the headquarters of the earth because everyone is still right in this whole valley. Because gotta remember, they were still having children and stuff after the time of the flood, but the earth was they were slowly drifting towards the east. So Mount Ararat was to the west. I mean, we get a picture of a map will make more sense. I can't really draw you a picture of a map for you right there. So you look at Mount Ararat and just start going down to east. You will see where the plain of Shinar is between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, right there in the Middle East. You can look for it for yourself in the map. Like Shinar is still a place that they have identified. God destroyed the towers, kinda. So this city was a rebellious city. This was like men essentially saying, we're going to set up our own government. We are going to govern ourselves. We're going to disregard God's law. We're going to forget God. We're going to not honor him. And that's why God took notice of what these people were doing, because it wasn't just nothing innocent. This was a purposeful rebellion against God, what they were doing. And that's why it was so atrocious.
It's something in these words too that always strike me, and this is why I love breaking it down. Because all right, so the first thing that I love about this is they said, come, let's build ourselves a city and tower that reaches heaven. Okay, so heaven, heaven is more than just the sky. Heaven, there's heaven is God's domain. We was talking about this earlier, if I decided to build a tower to heaven myself, I don't think anything would happen other than the fact that I would fail. I wouldn't be able to get it to heaven. But God sees this, and this is what God says. God came down to look over the city and the tower those people had built. God took one look and said, one people, one language. Why, this is only a first step. No telling what they'll come up with. So he's looking at this and he's saying, like, this is only the beginning. They're going to achieve what they set out to do.
Yeah.
Another thing that also blows my mind here is if you go a little further, it says no telling what they'll come up with. They'll stop at nothing. Now listen to this. He says, come, we'll go down and garble their speech so they won't understand each other. Well, who is he talking to?
Plural, right? Because he said we.
Come.
Yeah.
We'll go down. God didn't come down by himself.
Right.
So, now I know we know there's angels and everything and all this stuff, but it lets you know, he didn't just do it on his own. There was other beings or other entities. There was some stuff going on here, pretty much, is what I want to point out. And keep in the mindset of pay attention to the words that are used and who's talking.
And what's interesting in the book of Genesis is multiple times, we only in chapter 11, it's multiple times that God referred to themselves as we, you know what I'm saying? Not I. So instantly, I know that, or I make the assumption that the Holy Spirit and Jesus coming too. You understand? So this God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, or maybe at least two out of three. You know what I'm saying? So because it's plural. It's plural. He said, "Let's go." Like
we all ain't riding right now, but I'm just trying to put Holy Spirit come with ride.
Exactly. Another thing though is like what you were saying. If you make the Tower of Babel, you know that you're gonna fail, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you don't fail, right? No, let's say you were back then and it wasn't. And they weren't as advanced as we are in technology, right? Imagine Earl and I live on the 3rd floor. We have to walk up 2 flights of stairs to get to our point, right? Imagine how many flights of stairs it would take to get to heaven. You know what I'm saying? How possible is it for somebody to climb all of those stairs to get to heaven? So, instantly, I would think that God wouldn't be worried about that because nobody's going to walk out. You have to climb up Mount Everest plus more just to get there. Nobody's going to do that. You feel me? But now, if we look at what the Bible says, and I'm reading from the King James Version, Genesis 11, verse 6. Oh, I lost it again. Why do I keep losing that? All right, yeah. 11 verse 6. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do, whatever. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined. That's how the King James puts it. Nothing will be restrained from them which they imagine. So we talking about the people who had a big imagination, and they were very smart and they were very powerful in the things that they were doing. If they say, I'm going to build a tower up to heaven, they're going to do it. And this is where people have to stop thinking that the Bible is a fairy tale story. Because you might think, how are you going to get to heaven? Like it sounds unbelievable, but it just goes to show you the intellect of the people during this time.
Exactly.
You feel me?
Exactly. I mean, like a lot of people skip over that verse when they tell the story in the Tower of Babel. God says, anything they put their mind to, well, from this verse, anything they put their mind to, they will accomplish. Come, let me go down there and confuse their language. Let me put an end to this. God in his wisdom knew that I can't let this happen. Like you say, they already gave me a technicality. I can't wipe the world out. Granted, there were still followers of God in this time too. It wasn't as bad as right before the flood. You saw descendants of Shem who were still doing okay for the most part. But in this plane of Shinar, however you want to say it, pre-Babylon, they were essentially getting back to those pre-flood times right there in that city. And God was like, no, I can't do this. Right, it's only not even been 600 years yet, and y'all done start doing this foolishness again. Like, when you think, I mean, like, people forget, like, how close right after the flood this story is. This ain't that long after the flood. And God's like, okay, the world is getting so corrupt again. I have to put an end to this. And he said, you know what? To slow down the spread of evil, here's what I'm going to do. Y'all clearly love communicating together so much. I am going to confuse your languages. And some people ask, so why God did that? So now, Kaz just painted a picture of how tall this tower was getting. There was no way the person at the top was able to communicate with the person at the bottom. So they had go-in-betweens, like people I have to tell Daniel what to tell Nakhaz, what to tell Naomi, what to tell Izzy to bring to the top of the mountain, like to the top of the tower, what to bring. So now, one thing you got to remember now, these are all going to be brand new languages. Wasn't no translation yet. Wasn't none of that. So now I'm talking to Nakhaz, telling him, oh yeah, we need 100 more bricks for the east side. Nakhaz tell Daniel that in Spanish. He tries to understand it, confused, tells Naomi that in Greek. She heard that in Greek, tell Isabelle that in French. Well, Izzy might be able to understand that. But, just imagine you don't. So now you're speaking you speak Portuguese or something. Something different. And so now that's why it was so confusing to people, and they got frustrated. They couldn't communicate no more. And it's so interesting because you can research now. We have over 7,000 languages, yada, 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 now in today's time. But if you do the research, you can break all of these 7,000 languages and dialects down to scientists say around 94 distinct languages that you just can't replicate based off another language. And now this brings me back to Genesis chapter 10, where you see where God was starting to show the table of the nations, and he showed how each family was scattered throughout the earth based on their clan, their language, and their nation. And so, honestly, if scientists were to work a little bit harder, and they believed in God too, they can trim that down to about 70 languages when you actually could trace the families that were mentioned in Genesis 10 and see how many languages there actually were that God actually confuddled and confused the people with. And so now it was at this point where the children, I guess the children of Noah, because that's all what they were at that point, essentially. They had no choice but
to scatter.
Because now we can't understand each other. And it goes to something we're talking about pre-podcast. And so now you see how in history we have so many things that are common throughout the whole world that can't be explained if you don't believe in the Bible. Because scientists are still trying to figure out, okay, why did the ancient Incas, Aztecs, and Mayans have pyramids, but they built pyramids in Egypt, but we also could find some pyramids in ancient Mongolia and ancient China. You know why? Because they were, all of their ancestors, that was the form of building that they knew.
Mm-hmm.
So now when they scattered around the world, oh, you know, we know what to do. Build a pyramid.
Straight up.
So it's just so interesting how the Bible, like if you believe in the Bible, you really can see how the world played out through history.
It's like a lot of stuff just make a lot of sense, bro. Like, 'cause where did languages come from otherwise?
And why were human beings the only creature that developed a language pattern to not be able to understand each other? Because dogs can understand each other no matter what. You can translate a dog from Africa to the Bahamas, and the little pit bull gonna understand the little pit bull.
That's crazy.
We got flamingos in Inagua in the Bahamas. You can bring a flamingo to a zoo here in, what zoo we got here? One of the zoos here.
So let's just say Florida Zoo.
Florida Zoo.
Yeah, Florida Zoo.
Insert random Florida Zoo here, and that flamingo will fit in with the flock of flamingos here like it never left. Like it was always there because they can communicate with each other. So we are so much more intelligent than these birds, and scientists believe we evolved. Why were we the only species to evolve to not be able to understand each other? Oh, and the point I wanted to bring up before. If you go back in ancient history too, around this time, you literally can find the first documented writings, because now, before, they didn't really have to write because we all could understand each other no matter what. And so now this is when you start tracing back the ancient hieroglyphics. All the ancient text was just pictures and stuff. They all started around this time when people couldn't understand each other no more. And so they say, you know what? So our stories don't be lost. We have to start documenting them whichever way we can.
That's wild, bro.
That is, man,
Yeah.
because you're right, because a lot of ancient Sumerian texts, a lot of those old texts that they're discovering started around that age. And it makes sense, you know. They started needing to document their stories, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we keep just to get back into the flow, I just want to say, imagine how frustrating it is. I ask you for a monkey wrench, you bring me a saw. You know what I mean?
And you way at the top.
Like, what do I have to do with this saw, bro? Like,
Man, that's and you know what's interesting? Okay, so this is gonna be something more towards our time. And so we can see an example of a scientist who did something similar today. So I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Nikola Tesla. Like, we know there's Tesla, which is named after his last name. There's actually another electric company called Nikola who's doing cars named after his first name. But Nikola Tesla, he's literally one of my favorite scientists just because of the amount of stuff he gave modern society. Like, a lot of technology we have now today is because of him. But it's rumored that he created a death ray. But what he did after he created it, he tore up the plans and sent them to the different nations on the earth and said, if you guys ever want to reconstruct this, you have to work together. And that's allegedly why it hasn't really been reconstructed. The confusion of language really draws a barrier when it comes to collaboration. It's harder for us in today's society to wrap our heads around that, because you know, a lot of people can speak more than one language. And now we have documentation and translation. Okay, this means this in Mandarin, English, Spanish, French, Portuguese. We have translations for all these words now. But think about this. In this very instance, you're hearing your cousin speak a brand new language, and you two cannot understand each other.
yeah. And to you all, you speak in the same language. Like, it don't even seem different.
And so just imagine how frustrating that is. Just imagine. I mean, honestly, even when I travel to a different country, I'm in your country, and I'm like, I don't like how I can't understand you right now.
But even no, I mean, I talking about even countries where everybody's speaking English. Sometimes it's frustrating. I remember when I first come to the U.S., I was asking this lady for some Jordan 1s, and she could not understand what I was saying.
Oh yeah, that is frustrating.
I was like, what? I was like, yo, we're in a shoe store. You know what I'm saying? I have my index finger up. I'm saying one. It's one something. You feel me? And she kept saying, excuse me, what? And I'm just like, yo, can I get some Jordan? You got the Jordan 1s? Excuse me, what? And I'm just like, come on, nah, it's not that bad. Like, you know? Like, are we speaking the same language? And I was very frustrated, and I get very frustrated even to this day when I know I'm speaking the Queen's English, but somebody
can't understand.
They can't understand me. You know?
I can't dilute my accent anymore for you.
I can't. It's already to the point. Like,
and to tie that in, to give you like a visible example is, look at how we run companies and projects today. You know, when we go to work, we're put on teams to accomplish a goal. And when you think about trying to plan or build something on your own, it's very difficult to do. But once you get more people together, you're able to accomplish more and more. Like if you were trying to build a car or something, one person trying to build a car with all the different parts that's needed, it might take a whole lifetime. I got to get the rubber. I got to do this, an engine. I got to build the body. I got to build the frame. We all come together to build these machines and everything that we have today. Now, imagine if a whole city was focused on one project. Mm-hmm. You know, like imagine how many different things you could break up and have like, hey, East Sector 23 over here, y'all focus on just the engine. You know, South Section 25 over here, y'all focus on this one tire. And, you know, you're building the best thing and everybody constantly coming together to work on something. You're going to make something magnificent. I mean, look, today, we are building space shuttles. You know, that takes a whole team of people working on so many different things to be able to launch a vehicle into space. These are different accomplishments that we do today. And how many people working on that project around the world? Thousands, possibly, more than that. And these are the things that we're able to do. And it doesn't even come close to the mind and the capacity that they were using back then. So it just lets you use imagination to, wow, what could they have achieved?
You know what they could have achieved? Anything that they put their mind to.
You know what?
That's what God said.
They could have achieved. So
Anything they imagine, they could have achieved.
Yeah,
seriously. Man. Like imagine this though. And we on a super tangent. We gotta land this plane soon. We're on a super tangent now. Imagine this, right? Remember as a kid when you just used to draw all type of stuff, like you might draw planes and all type of crazy stuff. Everything you imagine, you could make. You draw a dinosaur, you could make. Like literally anything you could imagine. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like I want to continue this tangent, but I can line it, but I can still continue at the same time. So you're going to bring it back just in the biblical aspect. God, well, Jesus, who is God, so I don't even know if I correct myself, but Jesus told the disciples, all the things you see me done when I was here on earth, you can do it, but you can do even more. Greater. So that even goes, and we knew Jesus was healing the sick, healing the blind, feeding 5,000 from, some fish and some bread. So just think of all of that. And God said, by the power that worketh, in us through the Holy Spirit, we can do even more things than he did. So it even shows that at the very beginning of the human race, when God created Adam and Eve, God knew the potential that he placed inside his creation. And that was the first time, going back to Daniel's point, tying everything back together, when God said, let us make man in our own image. And we know the Father, the Son, through the Word, the words that were spoken in creation, and the Holy Ghost were all present at creation. And so from that very point, God knew the potential that he put in these created creatures who he made in his image to be higher than everything on the earth. Remember, our original purpose was to be the kings of the earth, to have dominion over the earth. And so now we see, even since of my creation, going through, we see how sin entered into the earth, corrupted the world. God said, hit the reset button after the flood. Iniquity was still found in his creation's heart again. And you even could see how it pained God, because he even had to come to that realization. And it wasn't even the realization that God didn't know, but he said, okay, I had to destroy them. That hurt me a lot. And now I have to admit that my children are now corrupted and evil. And now to see again, not long after the flood, they decided to build a city. God said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. Fill the earth. Simple instructions. They said, you know what? We're going to build a city. We're going to lean to our own understanding. We're going to find security in our own city. We are going to create our own laws. We're going to disregard God. And it shows when humans seize authority from God and define what good and evil is for themselves, just like how Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge and good and evil. When we start to have when we start making our own rules and saying what is good and what is bad, it results in a world of tragedy and death. Like the men of Babel determined to establish this government from God. They determined to turn their backs on God. And God said, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I can't let this happen. I knew what I placed in your minds and your hearts and the abilities I gave you guys since I created you guys. The Bible said God knew us before we knew ourselves. God said, you know what? Let's come down and confuse their languages. I gave them a mandate to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. I wanted them to carry my will and my love towards where they were going to still talk about my goodness. But I'm going to have to sacrifice that part of it. They still have to go and populate the earth, but now they have to go with some of them with their evil hearts. And we see even in Romans when God said, you know what? He gives them over to the deprived hearts because the world is filled with evil. Every slanderers, worshippers of idols and stuff, God gave them over to the deprived hearts. But we know the story is still setting up where God is still going to send a Messiah to save us from our sins. So even though we find all of this heartache and misery, we see how in each story God still has a chosen person, like a symbol of hope in the darkness.
The Lord told Noah and his descendants to multiply and replenish the earth. But instead of following these instructions, the citizens of Babel sought to build a tower that would take them to heaven. These plans displeased God, and he confounded their languages and dispersed them throughout the land. Soon thereafter, we discovered Abram, a man of blind faith, who went on to be the father of many nations. But we'll get into his story on the next episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. Tonight's episode included voice acting by Isabelle Labbe, Naomi Bellamy, our special guest, Daniel Bellamy, and your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz. Remember to go ahead and research on your own in order to get a more firm understanding of tonight's episode. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can follow us on social media at A Breath of Fresh Air Pod on Instagram and BOFAPOD on Twitter. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.